Let's take a closer look at the Black Series archive carded 6-inch figure version of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Varykino, living the Star Wars life.
Hello there, and thanks for visiting the Varykino YouTube channel. Today is Ewan McGregor's birthday, and of course he portrays Obi-Wan Kenobi in the Star Wars prequel series. So to celebrate his contribution to those iconic films, I will be taking a closer look at and unboxing the Black Series archive carded version of Obi-Wan Kenobi from Episode 3. This is such a fun figure. I've had this one for a little while. We picked it up on clearance, so there's a little bit of damage to the card, but we knew we would be opening this one up, so I didn't mind too much. So from the front, we can see that we have the Obi-Wan Kenobi figure in his Episode 3 appearance, complete with a lightsaber accessory there, and we have a dark image there of Obi-Wan against that black splice insert there. We've got Obi-Wan Kenobi written down the side, and the top of the packaging also features the 50 Lucasfilm Limited symbol, because if I turn the card over, we can see that this is part of the line celebrating the 50 years of Lucasfilm. It says here, commemorate the first 50 years of Lucasfilm with figures inspired by the Star Wars prequel trilogy. And here, we can see that we have the 3 prequel figures highlighted from this Lucasfilm timeline of Star Wars films. There is a little bit of a blurb here about Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan is forced to battle his friend Anakin Skywalker in a devastating lightsaber duel after Anakin turns to the dark side. So it doesn't specifically say Episode 3 very strongly on the packaging, but of course we can tell by the costume details and Obi-Wan's haircut that this is indeed an Episode 3 figure version of Obi-Wan. I kind of wish perhaps there was a little bit more detail there than just that name, but you know, Star Wars fans know what we're looking at. So a fairly standard black toned archive carded figure there from the front, and then it's kind of fun having that 50 Lucasfilm information there on the back. And you can see the local toy store price sticker for us here in New Zealand. Black Series figures are about 43 to 45 New Zealand dollars, but as I mentioned, I did get this one up on sale because it is an older figure now. So that is the packaging for this figure. A little bit plainer, but I do appreciate Hasbro reissuing figures for those of us that may have missed out on the first issue version in the box series of Black Series. So very excited to open this one up and take a closer look at the figure inside. So now I have the Obi-Wan Kenobi figure out of the packaging as well as his lightsaber accessory, so we can take a closer look at the details. And one of the things that I noticed straight away that wasn't quite visible from the front in that packaging was the soft goods component here for the lower half of the tunic. I don't know why I sort of didn't really notice how thin the sculpting was at the sides. I think I was just focused on the plastic tabards down here on the front. I hadn't really spotted that fabric. But there, so I really like that. I like the use of a fabric to create some of the bits so that we've got a little bit more posability, a little bit more form-fitting sculpting there. I think that looks really cool. So, of course, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi from Episode 3. It's not the sort of battle-damaged one like we have at the end of the Mustafar duel, where he's been singed and burnt. Some of the figures often have a little bit of an orange sort of glow painted effect to the figures, like they are standing near the lava of Mustafar. This one is not. We can see that he is nice and clean and not damaged or dirty here. So a nice generic Episode 3 Obi-Wan figure that you can use in just all sorts of scenes. It's not too tied to that final duel as described on that backing card. So I can see all sorts of fun articulation points here as well. But I'm just going to take a closer look at some of the details because this is my first time getting an in-hand feel for this figure. I can see that there is like a little bit of an accenting along the edges of the tabards here. It's a little bit more yellow and stronger colored around the edges, a little bit paler through the middle, which is kind of fun because this could look just like a very beige figure, a little bit boring in color tone. So I like just that little subtle detail there. It helps kind of define all of that overlapping fabric on the front there. Of course, because this is the episode 3 version, we've got a darker undershirt, just getting a glimpse of it at the neckline, and nothing really much there at the sleeves. You can see we've just got that solid plastic there. Perhaps not the most accurate, but it works for toys there. We can see, in keeping with the costume detail, Obi-Wan's tabards stop at the belt here. And we've got some really fun details of his Jedi belt with pouches in that classic prequel style. We've got a rectangular one here with a gold clasp. We've got the little gold domes here where the belt attaches. Another little capsule here. We've got those iconic prequel, if I get his hand out of the way, those little iconic metallic Jedi food capsules here on his belt. And then we've got another sculpted pouch here, the clip to hold his lightsaber, and we're going to test that out because this lightsaber does come with a peg. So we're going to see how well that inserts into this little attachment point here. And we've got some very tidy little gold details here, the rivets and the belt buckle. And we've got some more Jedi food capsules and another prequel style pouch there. Lots of little fine details, and the painting all looks very tidy and clean, especially on these little domes and rivets. Very nice painting there. So of course, let's look at the face. I do find, and it's probably helped by the facial hair, that Obi-Wan Kenobi figures do look like Obi-Wan. He's got kind of a neutral face. He doesn't look particularly like he's fighting or anything like that. I think that is a pretty sort of neutral Obi-Wan face. I think that looks pretty good, and it's even got that tiny little dot on the forehead because Ewan McGregor actually has that feature there. It's so small it doesn't even sort of really pick up, but I can just make it out when it catches the light in the right way. I can just make that out. The painting on the face looks reasonably tidy, with the eyes and the color for the beard, which of course flows through to the hair. There is a little bit of a seam line here. You can particularly see it on this side where it catches through some of that hair sculpting. A little less obvious on this side. The hair is a little flatter here, so it does hide in a little bit better there. And it looks like we have a little bit of a wash accenting the hair sculpting here in the back. So it just picks up all of that detail a little bit more on here, I think. A little bit on this side, perhaps a little less here, but there's definitely like a little added bit of coloring to accent that there. Very nice. I have to say, the sculpting of the tabards is a little bit funny because of where it has to stop at the belt for articulation. So it kind of, we can see the plastic sort of stops, especially if I sort of bring that up. But this is on the back. It's not going to be quite as visible. And of course the plastic's just going to behave differently than if it was fabric. On the front, perhaps a little less noticeable, but if we kind of tip it back, you can see it's just going to end in this line above the belt. It's not the worst, definitely better than the back. And we've got, going to test out the articulation. Sometimes the sort of the way that the shoulders form on Jedi tunics does impact on the arm articulation there a little bit at the shoulders. And I'm hoping we've got some good posability in the legs because of this soft goods component here. I really like the color. I think that is a really good match for the plastic components. The fact that I even didn't really spot that through the packaging at first is quite nice. Then we've got that same sort of caramel beige color, a little bit darker here for the pants. We've got a lot of sculpting and hinging going on here for the knees. We've got some very obvious little pegs. It's a shame that this one is kind of into the boot, but it's the same color of the pants. That one is a little bit more visible because of that sort of unfortunate position right on the boot line. And we can see that on the inside of the leg too. Those pegs do look quite obvious there, but hopefully there's some good articulation to make up for that. And we've got Obi-Wan's episode 3 style boots, which are a lot more of a reddish brown color than some of his earlier ones there. And we've got some articulation there at the ankles to test out as well. So pretty classic Jedi costume. hoping we've got some good posability with them, particularly for action characters, you know, that epic episode 3 duel. If we get the Anakin figure to pose alongside him, we want to do some cool lightsaber poses to recreate the duel scene on the shelf. So let's see if we can just get him to stand up. They always come out of the packaging a little bit wonky. Let's take a look at the lightsaber. So it is just the one accessory for him, and we can see that there is a peg. So I'm hoping this won't take too much work. We've got a really nice clear blue blade here, and I'm hoping just a little bit of wiggling, it will come undone. So if you want to, you can peg this to his belt. Let's see how easily this goes in. If it's going to get caught, I'm not going to stick it all the way in because I don't want to break this off. Okay, that went in really nicely. So there we go. That looks pretty cool. His iconic lightsaber. I have to say the painting on this looks really nice. We've got a really good mix of the different colors. Silver with that gold detail there. We've got the sort of coppery color here. And it really just adds to those details on the Jedi belt. I think that looks really nice. It does move quite freely, and I dare say you could probably knock that off, but in some ways I kind of like it being just a little bit on the looser side rather than the tighter side, because if you want to put it together and put it in his hand, you don't want to break that little attachment point. And the blade fits in there really nicely, and it's reasonably straight. There's always a little bit of wiggling with these ones. But yeah, that's a really nice saber. Very good. Okay, so I'm going to pop that aside and we'll do some poses right at the end. So let's check out and see how much we really can pose Obi-Wan. So his arms will go there, not quite a full T-pose. They do sort of a little bit of a downward slant because of this Jedi tunic, but honestly, this is such a classic sort of shoulder shape for Jedi tunics. I wouldn't want them to mess with that. And we can rotate the arms around if you want to do that. And I like the shape of the elbow joint. Flows with the fabric there. And we get just a little bit of the hinge from the back, but generally speaking, it's hidden by that drape there. That looks pretty good. Of course, as I mentioned before, we get that kind of solid sleeve. But yeah, if you try not to look at it, it's not too bad. We can rotate the arms at those elbow joints as well, all the way around. I know that it's kind of fun to put them in some wild poses, but at the same time, if this ends up like being a little bit too wild, the fabric just doesn't look right, you know, and also just anatomy. But yes, I like the way that it lines up with the drape, so we do still get that sort of a sleeve shape there. Now his hands, this one's got a little bit of a trigger finger going on, which is kind of funny because this is Obi-Wan. He does fire a blaster in episode 3 with Grievous, so I guess if you've got a blaster and you want to pose him with Grievous, you could do that. And then this one also has that kind of finger out. But in terms of the grip, it looks like that's going to take a lightsaber hilt fairly well. And we'll take a look at that in a little bit. So we can move his torso around fairly smoothly. I can go all the way around there, all the way to the back. And we get a little bit of backwards and forwards, but it's not really going to hold too much. It can go back a little bit, but it kind of just wants to rock forward, so not really much in that direction. So I'm just going to look up Obi-Wan's tunic here a little bit. We do have a seam at the top of the thigh, so we can get... Oh, that's very, very stiff though. Okay. It's very stiff on my figure. I can barely move that. There's like a clicking point that it wants to go to. So I probably won't be doing that too much. But we can get, if I raise his tunic up a little bit, we can get to there. So he can kick fairly high because of this. And the tunic does actually bend. This plastic part actually is thin enough to bend well to allow his legs to come all the way up. And let's check out his knees. There we go. So the kneecap section obviously looks kind of a bit weird when you do both joins there. It's just kind of stuck there in the middle. But that's a pretty high kick that we can do with that. And then of course, oh, that's quite a good ankle joint, really. I've got a lot of movement there that can really point back, and it's quite clicky, so that should hold an angle quite well. So some very clicky knee joints there. Oh, that's stiff. Okay, there we go. So we should be able to do some pretty cool poses. I must confess, I am not the greatest at posing these figures. I generally just, you know, pick something that resembles standing up fairly straight and try to balance them on my shelves. I have a lifelong fear of my figures tumbling off shelves and losing accessories on the floor, so I generally try and pick fairly stable poses for them. I think he looks pretty cool. The knees are a little messy, I think, in terms of sculpting. For me personally, I'd rather have a little bit of a cleaner look to the pants than have all of this kind of movement and articulation, because this just looks a little bit clunky. But I understand, you know, if you want to do some really cool dual poses, you're probably going to want a little bit of extra articulation. It's just very stiff on mine there. And yeah, that just position there, it's just a little bit awkward with the boots. And this one is very big. But I understand the restrictions with sculpting and articulation. It's just my personal preference. I'd rather have it a little cleaner and maybe just a simpler hinge there. But let's see how well he's going to hold this lightsaber, so we can get a pose going. So I'm going to try this hand and see how well it's going to just wiggle in there. Okay, that wasn't too hard. Fairly nice grip there. And then we can get, I always spend probably far too long trying to get some interesting poses going on my bookshelf when I've finished unboxing my figures, because sometimes they can look just a little bit awkward, but I think that looks pretty cool. He's fairly sturdy because of those really tight joins on his ankles. It's just finding the right ankle and knee combinations. There we go. I think that looks pretty cool. So yeah, I have to say I kind of prefer him from about here up. I like the sculpting and sort of the angles around his shoulders and elbows. Oh, and I forgot to mention he does have pretty good rotation in his hands, and there is a little bit of clicking backwards and forwards there, so you can get a little bit more posability with his hands. But yeah, just kind of wished I liked his knees a little bit better. But overall, I think this is a really cool figure. Definitely trying to build out my prequel Black Series figures a little bit more. And this one is a really cool addition. You've got to have Obi-Wan and Anakin for your prequel collection, being the main characters. There we go. I think he's really cool, and that was a really fun way to celebrate Ewan McGregor's birthday today by opening up a figure that I've had for a little while, but yeah, definitely the perfect occasion to do so. And now I can add him to my Black Series shelf. Definitely going to tweak his pose a little bit there, just to try and get something slightly resembling a pose that he does in the film. I really do like the texture that they've got on the tabards. Just looking at it, that sort of the fabric weave is kind of showing up there just as I'm sort of looking at the whole figure. It's got sort of a texture I can feel, so it doesn't look and feel like flat plastic, which is quite nice. And it kind of Sits very nicely with the texture of the fabric next to it as well, which is nice. If I can just bend his elbows a little bit so it doesn't look there. Something like that. Neutral pose, nice and sturdy for my shelf. Oh, and let's see. A little bit of head movement as well. Obviously side to side. Not too much front and back. Probably enough. You can kind of see the hinge under his chin there. Honestly, I kind of forget sometimes because I don't generally move my characters' heads in like wild directions. If you tip him to the side, you can see that hinge. That's just weird. So I'm just going to stand him there looking forward like that. There we go. Obi-Wan Kenobi from Revenge of the Sith, Episode 3, ready to add to my Black Series shelf. That was a lot of fun. Really getting into the Black Series line unboxings. So thank you so much for watching. Do check out our other videos for more Star Wars unboxings and adventures. Catch you in the next one. And as Obi-Wan would say, may the Force be with you.
If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like, check out our other videos, and subscribe for alerts about new uploads. Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.